And thank you for making the effort to be here after the storm required us to cancel the first one. But what we're going to do is we're going to each speak for probably about 2 minutes if we can hold ourselves to that, and then try and focus most of the meeting on your questions and answers. And I guess since I've got the mic, I'll just start briefly. As I said, my name is Adam Ebbin, represent the 30th District in the State Senate. This session is our 60-day long session to deal with about 2,800 bills that have been introduced. And right now we've got 1,000 remaining, 600 from the House, 400 from the Senate. And then two of the gentlemen at this table are involved in crafting our $100 billion 2-year budget, which will be released by the respective chambers tomorrow afternoon at 2 or 3. And then, of course, it still requires a lot more work to come up with our final budget. Personally, I serve on the Privileges and Elections Committee in the Senate, which is new to me, the General Laws and Technology Committee, the Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources Committee, and I try and work to make it easier for people to vote, for people who don't have a strong lobby in Richmond to be better represented. I'm not going to go into all my bills this year, but I will say that I'm working on marijuana, fairness for people who are in the hot lanes, things for small businesses like restaurants, and non-discrimination in public hiring and those sorts of issues, which I hope you'll ask us about. So with that, I also wanted to introduce my legislative aides and note that all of us who are here, we all have our legislative aides who are up probably even earlier than we were to set up this room, so thank them. In particular, I want to thank my aides, Sam Bosch and Chris Land. Okay. Thanks, guys. And what we'll do is all the legislators are going to speak. We'll take questions, and we're joined by Lead District Supervisor Jeff McKay, and we're expecting Lead District School Board member Tamara Kaufax, and they're going to each speak at the end as well. So with that, Paul, do you want to start?
Sorry. Hi, can you all hear me? I'm Paul Krizek. I'm the new delegate. I'm the new guy here on the front here, but I've been many times. I've been back in the audience as a community activist like all of you all. And I represent the 44th district, so I have about 5 or 6 precincts here in Lee district, and including the one right around the elementary school here, which is Hayfield precinct. I'm on a couple of committees, which I find very challenging. They seem to meet all the time. And one is the City County Towns, which meets very early in the morning on Wednesdays and Fridays is the subcommittee. And then I'm on the Courts of Justice, which meets after the session. So we have every morning, every day is a long day down there. I kind of, I used to work for Congressman Moran, and this is like Congress on steroids. It's really crazy. I have a lot more, as somebody who's sat in the audience all these years, I really have a lot of respect for my colleagues here. These are long, arduous days, and there's a prodigious amount of bills that we have to read and we have to be on top of. And even when you're on the floor, the session usually starts at noon every day, so you can go online and watch it. It's online, and I'm sure one of our aides can help you to do that. But it's something to see because I have my hand like over the button, the vote button. Honestly, the speaker gives you about 10 seconds to vote. You can't change your vote. You have to go, hit that thing. It's really kind of stressful, to tell you the truth. I'm trying to remember what I'm supposed to do, but you don't have a chance to even look at how your colleagues are voting. So it's really important, and there's no going back. So so far, knock wood, I think I've done all right. I'm very excited to, let me also announce mine. Thomas Coleman in the back. Thomas, wave your hand. He is my assistant, and he's my aide, but I call him my chief of staff really because we have actually 4 interns, 3 law students who are doing a great job, and then we have a session aide as well. She's not here, but she's going to be we have another meeting after Meredith and Tamara. But I was going to say, so we're working hard. It's a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to your questions. But I have to leave a little bit early because we have another town meeting this afternoon. So if you see me leave, just know that I'm moving on to my next committee. My other committee is Courts of Justice, and in the Courts of Justice, I'm on the
ethics, and the civil subcommittees. So they meet in the afternoons after the session. So there's quite a lot going on, and it's very, very busy. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jeff McKay, your lead district supervisor. It's good to see a lot of familiar faces this morning. It's also good to be in my daughter's cafeteria. When I'm in here normally to join her for lunch, it's a lot louder than this. I've never been in this room and it's been this quiet, so well done. But on a serious note, on our board's committees, I chair our legislative committee, which is how I get to interface frequently with the good folks at this table. And I took on this year chair of our county's budget committee, which obviously right now we're in budget process, we're in legislative process, things are happening in Richmond. My schedule is dead. I mean, it is so busy right now, but that's a good thing. I think we're making a lot of progress in a lot of areas. You'll hear about some of that today. But we do have a lot of challenges that, we look forward to a lot of citizen engagement and comments. And that's where I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your schedules and coming out today and sharing your thoughts, asking your questions, and giving us your opinion of what things are happening locally and at the state level that are important to you. I've lived my entire life in Lee District. I was born and raised here. And I take great pride in the people in the communities that I represent and doing what is best for them. And that's why I ran for office originally, and that's why I serve. And so I'm better able to accommodate those issues when you share them with us. And I'm hoping that we have a very good dialogue today on that front. As chair of the legislative committee, we review hundreds of bills that are introduced in Richmond from a county perspective. And we're one of the only jurisdictions in the state that gets involved in our legislative process to the extent that we do. And we publish a report and a tracking chart. It's this thick. We meet every Friday afternoon for hours on end and take positions on many of the bills in Richmond based on how they affect the county. And our principles are increased tax flexibility, preserving local land use authority, increasing funding for education, which is our #1 overarching priority and something that I brought forward in my position on the county board through the Virginia Association of Counties, where I had a resolution in to encourage the state to increase funding for education that was adopted statewide. And as a result of that, I'm happy to say we've really upped the ante in the conversation about education funding. The governor's put out a budget that increases education funding for the first time in many, many years in a significant way. And a lot of that is because local jurisdictions are raising that issue. So our principles in our legislative package are very clear. The last principle that we have is not supporting unfunded mandates. I mean, we believe very strongly that our local school board can make the best decisions on how to use the money that they're allocated better than a statewide unfunded mandate that tells our school board how they have to spend their money. And that's actually a principle of ours countywide. And so no unfunded mandates, increased land use and protections, land use control at the local level, increased taxing authority so that we don't have to over-rely on real estate and personal property taxes. And these are and education funding. Those are our principal initiatives for our legislators. The folks at the table with me here are excellent representatives of the issues of Fairfax County, but as you know, this is a big state. And so one of the reasons we get engaged and involved in the legislature is to make sure that other counties across Virginia, and many times, understand how things that are happening in Richmond affect them. And a lot of times they don't even know. So I think we play an instrumental role in the legislative process. But again, thank you all for coming today. Look forward to hearing your comments later.
Good morning, my name is Mark Sickles. This is my 13th year in the House of Delegates. My district is across the street, used to be on this side of the street too. Unfortunately, I lost the Hayfield precinct in the last redistricting, which was a mess. But you have got a great representative here, Paul Krizek. And so when you have problems, you live in Hayfield precinct.
We had big snaps, but we did all right.
I also, to keep this up, I don't want to fail to introduce my aide, James Heo. James, raise your hand. He's in the back row. This is, as Paul was saying, this is a racetrack type of job we've got. It is really incredible. You always feel like you're not as prepared as you could have been prepared, but somehow we get through it. The governor's budget, as Jeff mentioned, is better on education. He increases pre-K through higher education by over $1 billion in the budget. We have issues with the formula, of course, because there's only a handful of districts or school divisions in the state that have a higher, what we call LCI index than we do. So the formula works against so-called rich counties, despite the challenges that they may be having. Since I've been serving, I've been on the Health, Welfare, and Institutions Committee and on the Privileged Elections Committee, and I'm now the Senior Democrat on P&E and on the Elections Subcommittee. If you're concerned about having a more open election process and fairer elections and making sure the equipment operates correctly and any number of things, you can come down to our 7:30 a.m. Election Subcommittee meeting in Richmond on Tuesday morning and be with the handful of other people who get up at that hour. I mean, it's a really shame the way we do this. If Jeff operated like that here at the county, you'd throw him out. But that's the way we do business, and it's don't throw him out. Don't throw him out. But this is the way Richmond works. And I've been on the Appropriations Committee now for 2 years, 2 cycles anyway. And last year was the midpoint of the budget. So when we set the budget, we're really talking about amendments to an underlying budget. And we had some good news because we've saved money in healthcare a little bit, and we put it into mental health last year. Yeah, it's good. And we're going to have some even more. I'm not supposed to talk about what's going to come out tomorrow at 1 o'clock, but you can find out everything if you go online. They'll be putting everything online tomorrow. Hopefully our mental health funding will be really, really good. I'm on 3 subcommittees, and we meet a lot. So I spend a lot of time sitting on the 9th floor of our General Assembly building, listening to program directors talk about their programs and how it relates to the governor's budget. And there's some good and some bad, and we are going to change a few things from the budget, but largely I think the governor's going to have a good year. We'll find out at 1 o'clock tomorrow. The result of the way we work, I really don't know that much about the other subcommittees than the one I'm on. I kind of know generally, and I'm not on elementary education, but I have a feeling we're going to have some better news in the governor's budget, but you'll wait to see tomorrow how that turns out. We are doing one really major thing. I know this is 2 minutes, so I'll probably use my 2 minutes already, but I'll say one more thing. That's a large topic that this last administration and this administration is continuing because we've got a settlement agreement with the Justice Department, but it's really doing the right thing too, and nobody really disagrees with this, and that's a better approach to handling our disability programs, people with intellectual disabilities. We had what's called Medicaid waivers that help people to serve their family in their home and keep them out of institutions. Everybody knows that's the right way to go. We have closed now the Northern Virginia Training Center, which was the intellectual disability center for Northern Virginia. That was controversial for years. People said, how are you going to do that? The state has done that now and have people in the community. Now, I'm not saying it's a raging success so far because this just happened. It just closed. They got it done a little bit faster than they said they would even 6 months ago. But generally, there have been good reviews from it. We've got 3 more of those centers left. 1 of them will stay open, 2 more will be closing, and this budget reflects the funding needed to do that. And we're going to go away from certain pipe stoves of benefits for certain people and have a cafeteria approach to matching the direct service a person needs better to keep that person in the setting that they're most independent. So that's going to be some real big news. We're going to stop using some jargon we've used in the past, and maybe we can talk about that later if you're interested. Thank you very much.
Good morning. I'm Tamara Kaufax, and I'm the lead district representative here on the school board. I Just a little bit about me. I have a son that graduated in 2013 from Edison High School. I've been involved and active in the schools of the community for many years, and I currently have a daughter who is in 11th grade at Edison High School. I'm going to start with some good news, because a lot of what you hear about the schools is about the budget. We are in budget season, and we are concerned, very concerned about the 3% that was offered by the county executive earlier this week as the transfer to our schools. But I want to tell you about Fairfax County Schools. We are still an amazing school system with amazing programs. This year we first started our first strategic plan as a system. We have a portion of a graduate where we engage the citizens at talking about what do you want to see from students when they graduate, what skill sets, and how will they be either college ready or ready for businesses. And we've developed our whole plan around that. And we are still seeing great success, because 92.7% of our students graduate on time, and that exceeds the state average of 90%. We've outperformed our peers in the SAT with average scores of 1699 compared to Virginia average of 1523 and the state average of 1462. And a record number of our graduates were named Merit Scholarships. That's the highest honor you can get after taking the SAT and being college ready. But you know, as I said, if you're part of the 70% of the community, we realize we all want safe. I enjoy the parks, the libraries, and I know that 70% of you do not have children in the schools. But please don't think that investing in our schools is not important. It's critical to invest in education for the obvious reasons, right? Educating the future generations of our children so they have a successful foundation in life. But the school system is also a critical factor in maintaining high property values. It's critical to the Fairfax brand for recruiting businesses. That's extremely important, because they tell us that the #1 reason businesses come to our county is because of our excellent school system. But unfortunately, since 2008, we've taken historic reductions in our school system. We've taken nearly $500 million in cuts, and we've eliminated nearly 2,200 positions. And as the elected official, and as a parent in the school system, I really feel we're at a tipping point for providing high-quality education. We've raised class sizes twice, and teachers in the mid-career are some of the lowest paid in the region. So all of these gentlemen up here are my partners. They are my funding bodies. We work together, we talk together. Sometimes the dialogue gets heated, but I think that's because we all care so deeply about our schools and about our system. The governor came to Twain Middle School and did propose a budget. The governor is very dedicated to making sure education is a priority, not only K through 12, but pre-K and as well as higher education. But unfortunately, what we're seeing out of all of that, we're probably anticipating only $3 million from the state, $3 million more from the state, which in a $2.7 billion budget, it doesn't help us as much as we need. But I am dedicated to working with the members of this panel who help us as a community fund our schools. I believe they all know what a priority is, and I believe we all know what a challenge it is. But I'm grateful for your support. And as I said, if you're not part of the 30%ers in the school, please know that it's still extremely important to have a strong school system, because strong schools equal strong communities.
Hi, I'm George Parker, State Senator, and this is my 3rd term. Thank you all for getting me reelected last year. Those of you who live here at the Hayfield Elementary School, you're not in my district, but like with Delegate Sickles, if you walk across the street to Hayfield Secondary School, that would be my district. So you're right here at the border of several of the districts that we have in the area here. Lee District is a major part of my Senate district, and I certainly appreciate the support and all the things that we do together here in Lee District. My aide, Steve Myers, is in the back there, and also assisting in the office this year is Trudy Brisendine over here on the far side here. It's great to have the two of them helping out, because there's a lot going on, as Paul said, in a very short period of time, and I am almost never in my office, so between meetings and other things going on. I've served, this is the third term down there, and ever since I got elected, I've been on the Education and Health Committee and on the General Laws and Technology Committees, and I continue to be on those this year, and this year I've also joined the Finance Committee, which is dealing with the budget. So Mark Sickles and I will be down there tomorrow to get those budgets released. He on the House side and I on the Senate side. Just a couple of the highlights of issues that we're dealing with this year. In terms of things that I think are major issues, particularly related to the budget, one is we are making several significant investments in economic development, which I think is extraordinarily important and is a very positive sign. The governor has been strongly committed to it, and I think the Assembly is going to be on board on virtually all of the proposals that he has there. As everybody around Northern Virginia certainly is aware of, we took a big hit in October of 2013 when sequestration hit. So the Northern Virginia economy, the whole Virginia economy was significantly impacted by that. And in reality, a lot of people think that Northern Virginia would be the part of Virginia that would be most impacted by sequestration. But actually, Hampton Roads is more dependent on the federal government than even Northern Virginia. And Hampton Roads in Northern Virginia are about half the entire Virginia population, about half a little over half the entire Virginia economy. And when you have over half of your economy hit significantly, it's very significant. We were one of 3 straight states in the fiscal 2014 that lost jobs, had our economy go down, while the other 47 states were improving. All 3 were ones that were hit significantly by sequestration. In addition to us, it was Maryland and Alaska were the other 2. What has been extraordinarily positive is that our economy has actually bounced back quite strong since then. And again, Northern Virginia is leading the way. And just recently, we got the 2015 population estimates, and between 2014 and 2015, over 2/3 of the population growth in Virginia was here in Northern Virginia. And that's just Planning District 8, Arlington, Alexandria, Fairfax, Loudoun, and Prince William. So we are coming back. We're working on diversifying the economy and doing the types of things that will keep us going in the right direction. The other thing significant, and a couple of people have already mentioned it, is a major positive investment in schools. K-12 education, as I think somebody referenced, state funding took a big hit after 2008 with the recession and everything. It negatively impacted schools all across the Commonwealth. We've not fully recovered from that, but we're at least making a positive step forward this year to narrow the gap between what our funding will be starting next school year compared to what it was back in 2007 and the first part of 2008. So we're heading in the right direction. And one other thing I want to highlight that I think is highly significant is that in the Senate just the other day, we defeated a constitutional amendment which would have given the state the authority to, in effect, impose an unfunded mandate upon localities and local school systems, with the state approving charter schools and forcing the county to pay for that. So we did defeat that constitutional amendment. That was extraordinarily good. And I do want to welcome my colleague Scott Surovell here, who is the new senator. He actually served in this area before as delegate, and now he's keeping things lively in the Senate. And in the House, he's a Democrat and was a Democrat in a heavily Republican body, and they kept killing all his bills. So he brought all of them over to the Senate. He had 48 he'd saved over the last 6 years. So he's been busy this year.
Yeah, thanks, George. And I'm going to stand up because I'm cold and I need to move. But this is actually my 3rd event of the day. I did 2 soccer games this morning starting at 7 a.m., so I'm awake and I'm freezing. So my name is Scott Surovell. I'm the state senator for the 36th district. I used to represent Hayfield Elementary School when I represented Delegate Krizek's delegate seat. I've been to about 3 or 4 events in this cafeteria. It's always great to be back here. And my Senate seat is split about half between Lee District and about half between Mount Vernon, almost 50-50 actually in the Fairfax County portion. Let me talk about a couple things really quick. First of all, I want to make sure everybody saw the stuff I left out front. Number one, I have a summary of the constituent survey responses I received. I got about 650 people who responded to my survey. You can see what other people in the community think. There's pie charts, graphs, and totalization here. Secondly, I have a summary of the legislation I put in. Yes, I did put in 48 bills and 12 budget amendments. I've passed about 15, had about 10 carried over for study over the next year. And I'm still waiting to see what happens to my budget amendments. And then that's summarized here in my crossover update. You can see what's happened on the bills that I've introduced. So please pick up these 3 things before you leave. You can see what I'm doing on a daily basis. The other things I want to talk about really quick in my 2 minutes are a couple of the bills that I put in. Number one, One bill that I put in that got carried over, which I'm really excited about, is a bill to extend the Blue Line, to study extending the Blue Line down to Prince William County, from Springfield down through Lorton, Woodbridge, Occoquan. Those people have some of the worst commutes in Northern Virginia. Transit brings jobs, transit brings redevelopment, transit is something everybody believes in, and it was continued to be looked at. Number two, I put in a bill to clean up coal ash. I don't know if you've been following the stories in the newspaper. There's a big coal ash dump in southern Prince William County. It's polluting the Potomac River. It's going to continue to pollute the Potomac River. Unfortunately, the bill died on a 7-to-7 to 1 vote in committee. But there's going to be continued litigation. There's going to be continued investigation. And if you care about water quality and drinking water in Northern Virginia, if you like to use the Potomac River, whether it's to fish or boat or look at or swim in it, whatever, we have to keep that water body clean. And that's something that's going to keep bubbling around. I'm disappointed it died. Number three, schools seems to be a big issue. One thing I want to point out, since I was elected in 2009, the state of Virginia has increased its funding to Fairfax County Public Schools by $200 million. That's a 48% increase over what the state was funding to the schools when I first got elected in 2010. Governor McAuliffe's 2-year budget proposes right now a $58 million increase in funding over the next 2 years. And when you hear Tammy talk about the increase, we're hoping to get maybe another $2 or $3 million on top of that 58. But the proposed budget right now increases funding by $58 million over 2 years. So the state funding has gone up by about 50% since 2010. Okay, so just keep that in mind. We have been returning money. There's a lot of reasons for that we can get into if anyone wants to ask the question. But we have been increasing funding a lot. Number two, in terms of schools, electronic textbooks. Fairfax County rolled out an electronic textbook program back in 2011 or 12, but they didn't give children devices where they could look at it. So in other words, you could use the book if you had a computer, and if you didn't have a book, you can't. I represent a whole lot of students that don't have computers and broadband at home. And I introduced legislation for 4 years in a row that says you cannot use an electronic textbook program in the classroom unless you give a child a computer. A lot of our peer jurisdictions are doing it. Arlington's doing it. Alexandria gives every single student a computer. Chesterfield County, one of the other largest systems in the state, is doing it. Henrico's been doing it for 10 years. Fairfax County is not doing it. They are planning to do it, and they're starting to do it. And I'm happy to say that Delegate Krizek and I found a private donor willing to raise. We raised about $50,000, $25,000 from a donor, and Paul put up $25,000 from the charity that he runs to give a computer to every student at Bucknell Elementary School. But this is something that the government should be doing. My bill would require that, and I'm happy to say my bill passed the Senate about 3 days ago, and after a really tough floor debate by 11 votes, and it's going over to the House, and I'm hoping that bill goes through. Third thing, Senator Barker and I partnered on a bill to change our testing standards for English language learners for 11th grade English tests. Right now we're asking children who have just come to this country to take the standard 11th grade English test. And of course you can guess how they do. And so when you have populations of recent immigrants or English language learners, it brings your school test scores down. It makes it look like the teachers aren't doing their job, which is hardly the case. It has to do with the student population, not the teachers. So George and I have a bill that would require an alternate test to be used to assess better how the students are performing. So our schools that have high immigrant populations don't end up looking like they're substandard schools as compared with these other schools that don't have those. And so that bill passed the Senate, and it's moving on through. Fourth thing I want to mention really quick is my car title lending bills. I had 4 of those I put in this year to rein in these guys. There are 21 car title lenders between Wilson Bridge and Quantico. They link loans to people at 267% interest rates. Okay? I think it ought to be illegal, but I put in 4 bills to try and rein it in. But because of the spotlight that I've been shining on it for the last 12 months, because of my legislation, the industry has agreed to voluntarily take some practices to stop doing some of the things my legislation was directed at. And the committee said, we're going to give you a year to clean up your act. If you don't clean up your act, we'll be back. So I'm hoping we see some action on that. And then the last thing I want to mention really quick is a bill I put in about the Freedom of Information Act. The Supreme Court came down with a case. It was actually a case I was involved in. But they came out with a case that said when you make a FOIA request to your government, FOIA is how you hold your government accountable, make sure they're doing what they say they're doing, and you can see they're telling the truth. The Supreme Court said that if there's one sentence in a document that you don't get under FOIA, the government can hold the entire document back instead of redacting and producing the document. My bill says they can't do that anymore. If they can redact, they got to redact and produce the rest of the document. They can't put poison pills all over the place and then not produce records. Number 2, it says, the Supreme Court also said you have to trust the government in terms of deciding whether a piece of information is exempt or not. And my bill says you don't trust the government. A judge gets to look at it with a clean set of eyes. They don't have to believe the government or take the government's word for it. It's an even slate. You know, justice is equal scales. And my bill passed the Senate 39-1. It passed the House 99-0. they're going to hopefully flip-flop and pass each other's bills this week and get to the governor and get it signed before the session's over. But those are 6 things I'm working on amongst the 48 bills that you have. And I look forward to your questions. It's always great to be here and take questions in Lee District.
We're going to take your questions and try and get to as many as we can. We're excited that we've got our local partners here. We want to focus on state questions to start, and then if we can, just before we adjourn, take a few local questions, schools questions, if you've got those as well, if that's all right with folks. John, you had a question?
It's about the voting thing. There's too many voting issues here, but no, maybe I'll just ask about 3. First, that the bill wants to against the photo ID requirement, and if anything is happening in the state legislature on photo ID, and then unfortunately a much bigger voting issue, DMV. Every election year, I don't see problem with photo ID actually, but I do see problem with DMV. People think they register, change their address at the DMV, and when they go to vote, they never heard of them. Okay? Anyone who wants to answer?
Okay. First, regarding the photo ID and whether or not, if I understood correctly, you want to know if there's any changes coming to whether or not people are required to have a photo ID.
Right.
And the answer is no. We've been trying to make it a little bit easier for people. For example, Senator Jennifer Wexton of Loudoun had a bill that would have allowed folks who are in assisted living and nursing homes that are licensed by the state to have their IDs be good, just the way an employer ID is good. That did not pass. It passed the Senate. It did not pass the House of Delegates subcommittee. I know that Delegate Sickles voted for it, but some of his colleagues were not as kind. Then your other questions about the DMV, and when you change your address at the DMV, if that automatically changes your voter registration.
It should be, but when people do it manually, it often doesn't work.
Yeah, well, that's a good suggestion for something we need to look into and perhaps introduce legislation to make it easier in the future.
John actually put that bill in about 2 or 3 years ago, and it got rejected because the Department of Motor Vehicles and the State Board of Elections began doing electronic voter registration.
Okay.
And now when you go to go through your driver's license, it asks you if you need to update it, and you can click that button and it flips you over to the State Board of Elections site where you can change it.
I think.
Number one. Number two, in terms of other action on ID stuff, during the last election cycle, I've created a website where you could apply to vote absentee electronically. And I signed up about 1,000 people to vote that way by mail. So you can sign up to vote by mail electronically using a website. It's democraticabsentee.com if you want to use it in the next 2 weeks. It still works. And but some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle didn't like it, even though it was Speaker Howell's idea. And they did put in legislation this year to prohibit the use of electronic signatures on absentee ballot applications. There was another bill to require you to use the official state website, which would require ID, because you can only use the state website if you have an ID. Those bills were all rejected, or they were carried over to next year because some people spoke up and thought we shouldn't be putting more burdens on absentee voting. So at least we had a little bit of pushback for once on an ID bill. So we have done a few things to make it a little easier to change electronically and to vote electronically, and there has been a little bit of pushback on it, especially in this presidential year. So, and I would remind everybody there's a primary on March the 1st. Republican or Democrat. And so you can vote absentee if you're not going to be in town, or if you work in DC, or if you work in Alexandria or anywhere. There's all kinds of reasons you can vote early by mail or vote in person early. You ought to do it. Even if you're working in Richmond. That's why I filled out mine last night. I'm going to mail it in on Monday.
I was working against that bill that they're trying to fix Scott's little program there. But the problem was that there's a lot of IDs that are legal to use other than your driver's license. That's a big hurdle electronically to do that. This year we killed bills that allowed your any nursing facility, assisted living facilities that's licensed by the state, an ID as your legal identification. They killed that, and the delegate from Arlington had one that would allow you to use a student ID from a university outside of Virginia, because so many students live in Virginia but go to school at Georgetown or American or Gallaudet or something, and could use it. But they killed that too. So it's not really a welcoming place. We killed numerous no excuse absentee ballot bills, or for over 65. We killed one for over 70 years old with no excuses over 70 years old. And these things would actually help us on election day. One of the things that you've noticed, maybe you've noticed as you've voted the last few years, is we've gone to 100% paper ballot now. That is so that we can have a recount with the electronic machines that turned out could be hijacked, electronically. If we have a close election, we tend to have a lot of close elections in Virginia. You can actually count the ballot now, and it hopefully this will be the first presidential year that we have it all. We had it all paper last year, but the turnout won't be anything like it will be this November. You'll be able to take as long as you want to read the ballot measures and then just go vote. So you won't have people waiting behind you. Hopefully that'll make things good. It's a little counterintuitive because you think paper ballot's old-fashioned, but if you take time away from the line to fill it out, hopefully it'll move more quickly. I had a bill last year that required at least 2 Scantrons if you had over 4,000 bills. That's the law now. Got my fingers crossed, but there's, I would encourage anyone this fall, and even as Scott said, for a couple weeks from now, to vote early, because if you leave Fairfax County for work or you're gone for more than 11 hours, or a host of other reasons, you can vote early, and that would help everybody on election day to not, to reduce the line. So, thank you. Yes. Okay, Sharon.
I should be here. Anyway,
We can hear you.
you can hear me, okay. I just have a question to ask of you. We have talked before about crime in Virginia Hills. You mentioned that what you really needed was to have more funding so that we could have more policemen in that area for all items in the county. What do we as citizens, all of us, have to do to help you to get that kind of money to give us that? And I have a second question after this.
Okay, good question, Sharon, and this is one of the many budget challenges that we face in Fairfax County. Just to give you order of perspective, our public safety budget in the county is exactly 11.9% of all revenue coming into the county. That's the second largest expenditure in Fairfax County. The public school transfer is around 53%. The next closest thing is public safety at 11.9%. So obviously I have a strong feeling that we have underfunded some of our public safety agencies. The good news is there's 2 bits of good news in the budget that was presented on Tuesday, which the ink hasn't even dried yet on the proposal. But there are 2 things in it that are very good. One is there's money to add additional police officers in Fairfax County of substance for the first time in many years. And the reason why that's very important to this end of the county is any of you who have driven to the courthouse know how long it takes to get there. We lose officers for a much longer period of time in this end of the county than other parts of the county because of the travel time they have to go to court. You know we have school resource officers in the county budget in every one of our middle and high schools. That's taken some of our boots off the ground in our neighborhoods because we have officers now in our schools, which is a very important thing. When a crossing guard doesn't appear at their post at a school, we pull an officer. At any given time, we might, out of Franconia, have 6 or 8 officers available. An accident's going to pull 2 or 3. You get a crossing guard, pull 2 or 3, and you can kind of see what I've got left on the ground. So there's a vital need in the budget to add police officers, and this budget adds police officers. The second and probably most important long-term thing that's in the budget, and I thank the voters for approving the public safety bond question that was on the ballot last November, because in that bond there was a program to build a South County police station in Lorton. The Lorton area has grown at a rate similar to what Kingstown did in the 1980s. And Lorton is served by the Franconia District Police Station. In fact, Mason Neck is served by the Franconia District Police Station. So in building a new station in Lorton, we're going to do an animal shelter and a police station down there. And when we build that in Lorton, we will be able to redraw the boundaries of every police district in Fairfax County and Titan, which will mean Franconia will not be going to Mason Neck anymore. They'll be coming out of a new South County station, which will compact Franconia, which is the busiest station by call volume, not by crime, but by call volume in Fairfax County. It will also shrink the size of the Mount Vernon District Police Station. And so building that new station is vital in tightening our boundaries, because that means police officers stretch. You know, they're stretched thin now, but their reach will be much greater. That combined with adding new officers in this budget, I think is absolutely critical to this end of the county, and really is the first time we made a sizable investment in policing in Fairfax County for a lot of years.
I'm sorry, can we move on to another person, is that okay?
Yeah, can I come back to this?
When we do the local questions at the end, sure.
Do I have to stand up?
No.
My name is Elaine Peterman. I represent the mental health community, both at the county and state levels. We're interested in not cutting funds for mental health services. I belong to a couple of peer support groups. I myself have a mental illness, and I'm in recovery from that mental illness, which some people think you never recover, and it's not true. You can recover, and part of that recovery has been due to the services I've had available to me from the county and from the state. Now, I'm in this peer support group that's called DBSA, which stands for Depression Bipolar Support Alliance. And the state funds that partly, in addition to donations and grants. So we're interested in seeing if those funds are not cut, because those services are vital to the mental health community, both in Northern Virginia and the rest of Virginia.
Thank you very much for your comments on that. I'm heavily involved in the mental health issues. I actually worked professionally for the Regional Health Planning Agency in Northern Virginia for a long time, and now run a community health center that does have a behavioral health service. I also serve on the Deeds Commission, referred to, a 4-year study that's being done by legislators working with the administration on trying to improve our mental health services. We've done a lot of good things, but we've also underfunded programs significantly in the past, and we've not necessarily always had the best structure. And so what we're doing is working on enhancing and improving those. There is a good bit of additional money proposed by the governor, and I think you'll be pleased, at least for money that we will be adding in the Senate budget tomorrow, when that comes out, that's specifically targeted mental health services and trying to ensure that people have access to the care they need. Because there are some of the areas around, just even in here in Northern Virginia, where if you have a mental health issue, you don't get service from the local community services boards until or unless you go into crisis. And that simply is not an answer to the problems. That, in effect, is inviting and creating problems. So we are making significant progress on that. We did just pass legislation in the Senate that will provide certification for peer support personnel, trying to improve the peer support programs. The peer support programs have been extraordinarily helpful and successful.
Yes, they have.
They've had the literature shows great effectiveness of those programs, and what we're trying to do is to enhance that, recognize it, make it a little more part of the formal structure, and improve things. We have done 2 years of this 4-year study with the Deeds Commission that was set up following the suicide and attack on Senator Deeds from his son. We have 2 more years to go, and we're working with the administration to try to continue to make progress. It's going to take this won't solve everything, but we are at least heading in the right direction on that. So I'm pleased to be part of that process. So.
Thank you so much for your time. I have been a resident of Fairfax County for the last 14 years, and I have seen the transformation. Economic development, I think that we're all proud of that. We have seen the roads being expanded, Route 1, increasing the number of housing units, and Norton, it's a brand new community, and I was wondering if the county policies on economic development may have affected the revenue of the property taxes, because I have seen on the website that there are some credits even to some areas for developing affordable units on rents, maybe affordable units that you can purchase. But I'm really concerned. I mean, I'm very proud of being a Fairfax County resident. I know that my taxes are well invested and well managed, but we all talk about the cost, but we don't talk about the revenue and how we are being fair for us paying the fair share, putting our kids in school, how you guys are managing or supervising the revenues, how the tax credit that we're giving to, for example, North of Grumman, to move the headquarters here, and some of the other policies that may have affected the revenue. I mean, I understand that we are not gonna finance everything from the federal or the state, and 80% or 85% of property tax, so I don't see why the school have to be so affected by the economic downturn when we all paying taxes and we have seen all these new buildings coming up here. So you guys have more revenue from the property tax. And my other question, just to finish one more thing. One more thing, I'm also concerned about the wealth transfer, because we have a lot of TJ Maxx, a lot of Walmart, and a lot of other big companies store here, and they're paying really very low salaries, especially to the minorities. And I do taxes for some of the minorities, and these people are very struggling. And I think that it's time that we replicate what they're doing in Seattle, and we increase the minimum salary to everybody, so everybody can contribute more, pay more taxes on sales tax. And that's brings me to another point. A lot of military families are over here, I'm very proud of that, one more thing. But more military families
We need to start.
they
We need to start
purchase.
answering your questions. And actually, you've asked a question that
Thank you.
about every person up here needs to answer now. And so, first, let me. And Paul is jumping to answer the question about minimum wage and pay, which I think is an important one. But let me just address the revenue piece for a moment, because not all economic development necessarily generates new revenue to the county. In fact, residential new development costs the county money. And the reason for that is because the services that are attached to those new units. For example, a per pupil cost of education in Fairfax County is around $13,000, and $10,000 of that is paid by the county. So if your house is assessed at $725,000, your tax burden's about $9,000 right now. So if you have one kid in school, it's costing the county money net. And so residential growth does not help the county budget. Commercial growth, on the other hand, substantially helps the county budget. And what you've pinpointed is one of the economic challenges that is inherent in our budget right now. A very small percentage of our revenue comes from commercial development. In fact, if you look at the tax base of the county, under 20% comes from, under 20% of the county is developed commercially. And so we've set a goal as a board always to achieve a much higher percent of commercially zoned and developed property in the county. But the challenge with that is, as many have mentioned up here before, sequestration, some of the other things, we have a lot of vacancy in the county. Office vacancy is driving a hole right into the Fairfax County budget. And that's wherein lies one of our biggest challenge. Appreciation of residential properties this year, a single-family detached house assessment went up an average of 1.5%, which is below what an inflation number we would need to even get even is on assessments for residential. Luckily, commercial values went up slightly, but minuscule. It's not a large portion of the Fairfax County budget. The other piece you asked, and I think some of the state folks want to address the incentive piece, because Fairfax County offers zero incentives for people to come to Fairfax. We don't. And so the state has, through the Governor's Opportunity Fund and other ways to incentivize job growth in an area. But in Fairfax County, we don't offer financial incentives for business relocations. In fact, most of the business relocations that come to this area, the new net ones we've gotten, have come for a myriad of different reasons. Fundamental to those is the quality of the county that they're locating in. It's not that we put things on the table. And so we're often competing with Maryland and the district for new jobs and new commercial growth to come into the area. Maryland has much more flexibility in what local governments can offer in terms of incentives than we do in Virginia. So we don't do that in Fairfax County. But what we do is strive to encourage as much commercial economic redevelopment as possible, because the commercial tax base is subsidizing the residential tax base in Fairfax County. And I don't think a lot of people think of it in those terms. They just look at net new revenue coming in. And there's one last thing I wanted to address, a little off topic, but Senator Surovell mentioned the increased state funding for education every year. But the problem with that is the reason we got more money from the state is because we had population growth in our school system.
And so for each student that walks in the door of a Fairfax County public school, around $3,000 of that cost is the money coming from the state. $10,000 for each of those students comes from the county. So when you see new money coming in from the Commonwealth of Virginia for education, that's $3,000 of a $13,000 expense to the county. So that net new money is only a reflection of population growth, and it actually creates a larger hole in the county budget when you see that. And so these things, when you look at them from that perspective, start to make a lot more sense. But we need more commercial economic development in the county long term. We need to diversify our land uses to be able to support that, because the only positive thing I will say with some of the residential growth we're seeing, especially around metro stations, we're seeing a lot more condos, apartments, smaller units, efficiencies. Those don't generate typically the number of school children of the old Fairfax County suburban cul-de-sac single-family detached model. And so over time, I'm hoping we can equalize that a little bit more, but residential growth in the county is a cost leader in our budget, not a saver.
Those are good questions, and then good answers from Supervisor McKay. Let me just address the minimum wage. Before I do that, I just also want to say that one of the things that we're still recovering from is this slow motion sequestration that's been going on for the past 2 years. And when businesses don't know what's going to happen, that uncertainty makes it very difficult for them to locate or stay in Virginia and Northern Virginia if they don't know what's going to happen next. When the government is under the sequestration situation, it really does hurt the economy. We've suffered terribly from that. We're trying to recover from that. On minimum wage, I just want to give you guys a little bit of we are all here on the same page, and we're really working on the same side, trying to help out. We're all fighting very, very hard down there in Richmond, and the supervisor and the school board are doing a very good job of lobbying us and making sure that we stay on the right track and keep us honest down there, which I really appreciate. I want to thank them, and they do give us a lot of material, as Jeff showed you, and that's just a little bit of what we get from the whole state. But if I wasn't here right now, I'd be reading all my material. But it's tough down there. It's a different place. It's like stepping back in time a little bit, maybe 200 years back in time. And you don't realize it until you go down there. And I do recommend that you all come down and visit us. I know Senator Parker won't be in his office too often, but I'll be down there a little bit. But even though I've got a lot of committees, I'm always available, and I do appreciate you coming by and make it. You don't have to make an appointment. Just swing by, and if I'm not there, my aide will text me, and I'll try to make it up to wherever you are, or you can meet me in the committee. So anyway, as far as just to give you a flavor about kind of what's going on down there. So I had 2 bills. I thought they were very reasonable bills. I even talked to the Mount Vernon League Chamber, and they were I won't say supportive, but they were somewhat supportive. So I thought well, yeah. So one of the bills I had was to increase the minimum wage to $10.10. Not the $15 in Seattle even, but I mean, none of us believe, we don't, if you work full time, 40 hours a week, you should not be forced to receive federal or government assistance or charity. I mean, right? That's awful, and people are working hard, and they've got, sometimes, they're working 60 hours and they're still on assistance, and it's because some of these big companies are paying very low wages, and that is not right. So I tried 10-10. And I even made it very reasonable, so I exempted any business with 15 or less employees. I also exempted 25-year-olds and under, because a lot of the argument is, hey, we're going to hurt our kids, the young people, they're not going to be able to get a job if the minimum wage is raised too high. So they were exempted in my bill. And I also had a second bill, in case the first bill didn't pass, my second bill was a study. And the study was what would happen, if the minimum wage went up to $8 to $10 or $15. And if there was these kinds of exemptions where small businesses, maybe 50 employees or less, maybe it was 26 years and under, or maybe it was 21 and under. So this study was to tell us so that we could have definitive evidence of what's going to happen. And so I went up to argue. First, I argued before one committee about the minimum wage increase, and that was summarily dismissed. And it was, I tried my best. And then I went to I think it was the Rules Committee. Thomas would know. Well, yeah, the rules committee upstairs, the rules, and that's like they're like the star chamber up there, and so I thought, this is a reason why I'm only asking for a study. I'm not asking for a minimum wage increase. And somebody got up, and there was a lobbyist. What they do down there is they'll say, is there anybody in the room? Every committee room is open to the public, and I really recommend you come and sit in a committee meeting, because those are really where everything happens. That's where we're able to try to do to mitigate the damage done by some of these bills. But we try to really work on them. And so I gave a really good report, and I thought maybe there's a few from the other side who are going to agree with me. And then the lobbyist representing all of the retail industry, she got up and she said, we feel this is going to be detrimental to a business in Virginia. This is a study. Okay, this is a study, not an increase, just a study to see, maybe we need to decrease it. Maybe the study would show we need to decrease it. I doubt it, but, I thought that would be a good shot, right? And so she gets up, she says, she keeps talking about her feelings, we feel this, we feel that. And so I get the last word. So they always say, Delegate, you have the last word. And so I said, we need a study, because we're going by feelings over here. A study will tell us exactly whether these feelings are accurate or not. And what do you think the vote was? The Democrats voted for it, the Republicans voted against it, boom, it was killed. So that's what we're up against. There's lots of bills like that, and it's a tough environment down there. I mean, I'll just tell you, like ending discriminatory housing practices. That would make it unlawful. We had a bill to make it unlawful to discriminate against individuals in the housing on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. What do you think happened to that? That was killed. It didn't even get a hearing in subcommittee. So it's really, really hard. It's tough down there, and we're working very hard. We're doing our best. I think we just have to keep doing it. We keep plugging away. We have to hope for one day with gerrymandering that we do something about gerrymandering. We can get more, better districts. But it's really, I'm not 100% frustrated by it. I mean, I'm going to keep fighting for it. But I do want to say that it's a lot of it's incremental change down there. So I just want my colleagues here working very hard, and I want you to realize that. And I think it's important to recognize that it's a different world down there. So let me pass it on to Mark.
I just want to make two quick points about a couple of things you said. We passed, an exact opposite of what you want, we passed a bill that would prevent Jeff from having any standards in the contracts that they put out for Fairfax County to procure services for the county. So he could not say, we want a higher wage for our values for county services. It's important who your governor is, because that will never become law because of our governor, thankfully. So, number two is the state does have a lot of incentive programs to bring businesses here, and they use a lot of them in Northern Virginia. I mean, Northrop Grumman got here, their headquarters with incentives from the state government, and I didn't bring a list of them, but the state does. They have a performance grants. You have to provide so many jobs, you have to grow this much, and the state kind of works in partnership. We are going to have a big program called Go Virginia that is going to try to leverage business ideas with the government, kind of work in partnership, because a lot of the future of our new economy is going to be our university systems and research, taking that product and trying to create new jobs, new companies, new businesses right here in Virginia. And we've got to have a substantial effort in that area. We're going to spend $1.4 billion just in research money in one area. And so there's a lot of stuff going on in that area to help us diversify our economy. Because the big issue is we're too dependent on the federal government in Virginia. Everybody knows that. That's not a partisan issue. Everyone knows we have to diversify, create our own economy. And that's what we're really trying to do in this 2-year budget we're considering.
Can I say something real quick? Mark, just a couple things really quick back on the real estate tax question you asked. I just did the math really quick. So since 2010, the way we calculate school funding in Virginia, it's a calculation of what's called average daily membership, which is the number of students in the system. It's the amount of real estate that you have to tax in your county. Okay? Then it's a function of how much income taxes your county has. So the more students you have, the more money you get, but also the more real estate, the more income you have in your county, the less money you get. Idea being the wealthier your county is, the more stuff you have to tax, the less money you get from the state. So since 2010, the student population in Fairfax County, pursuant to the state formula, has gone up by 7.4%. It's gone from 167,000 to 179,000 students. 7.4%. State funding has gone up by 48%. The reason state funding has gone up is because the real estate crash in Fairfax County was a lot more horrific than it was in the rest of the state. Our real estate values got really pumped up during that real estate market, and they didn't get pumped up like they did in the rest of Virginia. And then when they came crashing down, the way the proportions flipped in Virginia, we ended up getting a big windfall of money back. And that's why our funding went way up. We got a lot more money from the state than we otherwise would have. And luckily, that's continued to sustain itself. So that's why we have $200 million. I would also point out that this is why we need to extend Metro. We need to get the yellow line down Route 1, we need to get the blue line down to Woodbridge. Because in the counties that bring smart growth, they see a more balanced tax system. This is why Arlington County is actually cutting their tax rate this year, because they have a lot more stuff to tax per square foot than everybody else does. So Arlington can actually cut their tax rate this year, whereas in Fairfax we have a lot of pressure to increase it. So we need to invest in our infrastructure, bring that kind of development to this county. And the last thing I'd say really quick is that Fairfax County actually has more vacant office space right now than Loudoun and Prince William has commercial space. Okay? There's a lot of, commercial development is being concentrated around metro stations right now for reasons. That's what's hot, and that's what we need to build. But we're in a competition for that commercial development with all of Northern Virginia. Everybody wants it because it produces that gravy revenue that you don't have the school services on it. So it's a really tight competition for it. But the way we're going to win it is by investing in transit, and that's why I'm excited to be working on the yellow and blue line extension.
We've got a few questions in the middle there. I did want to mention Scott's been a real leader in fighting for Metro to be extended, but this is a long-term proposition. And if you want to pick up one of these sheets for Embark, this talks a little bit more about what's coming in the closer future, which is working towards bus rapid transit number 1, which is not yet funded, but we are putting the pieces in place, working to get that as a first step. So we've got the gentleman in plaid, and I think there's a bunch of folks with you, or near you. Why don't you start, I'm sorry, you've got the microphone, I didn't realize that, Joanna. Why don't you speak and then give it to the gentleman in plaid.
Hi, I'm Joanna Garcia. How are you guys doing? I am going to address SB 404. And in that bill was the ability to have a 12-month prescription for birth control. And me being a woman, some of us have had to take the pill or any other contraception for 30 years. Some of us had started when we were 12 because of medical conditions, endometriosis, continuous periods, those kinds of things, all the way into our 50s, because even though you're over 35 doesn't mean that doesn't stop, right? Your ability to have children is still there. So a lot of us have been on the pill for 30 years. So my question, Senator Barker, is you voted no for that bill. And you have been such a staunch supporter of women's right to choose. And so I'm just curious as to, I'm sure there's some mitigating thing in that bill. Please let me know what your thought process was.
Sure. I'd be happy to, and yes, I have been, certainly a leader in women's health issues over the years, and helped head off some of the really bad bills that were proposed in 2012. The reason I voted against that bill was once we got all the information, that clearly there are options that are already available. Right now, a physician or other provider can write a prescription for 12 months. So the 12 months is already available and can be written. All the major health plans in Virginia, every single one of them has mail order delivery of drugs. What happens right now is that a 12-month prescription can be written. What the significant factors are whether a woman has to go back to the provider to get a refill or to get prescription renewed, whether the woman has to go to a pharmacy or other type of thing, or whether the woman has to initiate something to get the refill. Right now, all of those issues have been taken care of, because what can happen now is a prescription can be written for 12 months. The indication can be given you want it to receive it by mail, and all of the major plans provide, there are 9 major plans that provide services in Virginia that had checks done on that. Every single one of them provides it. So a prescription can be written for 12 months. The woman never has to go back to the physician or other provider. The woman never has to go to the pharmacy, and the woman never has to make a phone call or go online to be able to get the refill. So all of that is already available, and actually there is somewhat of a cost associated with it. Actually, the bill originally proposed having Medicaid patients incorporated in that, and what Medicaid looked at the information, and they determined that it would cost about $3 million a year to provide it. So given that everything is already available, so that the woman doesn't have to go back to the provider, doesn't have to go to the pharmacy, doesn't have to initiate a refill, it seemed to me that we're already providing that access there, and it was not in our interest, and in fact say we have to do it in a way that would add to the cost.
Paul wants to speak.
Okay, I understand that, you know, in this situation, when you vote no, that, in my opinion, that's saying that that you don't support the birth control situation. By saying it's already available because all these other wickets are put in place, doesn't make it that bill providing that 12-month prescription should be required. So, you know, I'm not going to be able to give you a good example, but because of the no, I think that's a situation that because we have all these other things in place, it's the wrong message. It is the wrong way, in my opinion, to do that.
I just want to speak to reproductive choice issues and some of the other bills that came out of the House. That bill hasn't come to the House yet. But there's been a slate of women's health care equality legislation, most of it carried by our colleague Kay Corey, and all of those bills have died in committee, sad to say. The good news is I'm on the, as I mentioned, I'm on the Courts of Justice in the Civil Subcommittee, and we were able to kill a bill that would have banned abortions after 20 weeks, virtually any abortion after 20 weeks. So that is, we'll see it again next year. It's been passed by through to next year, but we were able to stop it there. Unfortunately, the House was unable to stop legislation that would fund Planned Parenthood. We all voted against that and tried to save Planned Parenthood. And so thank you for that vote.
Hi, the Friday of President's Day weekend, we had a widely reported snowstorm on the way. But it was widely reported that it wasn't going to start until about 5 o'clock. Yet at 9 a.m. at the vacant building across the street, there was a dump truck with the plow on it, running, lights on, running. I assume it was running most of the day. Rose Hill Plaza, there were about half dozen at least pickup trucks there waiting for the storm to start. After 3 minutes, those guys are violating the law. They could get a fine of up to $25,000, I believe, under state law for unnecessary idling. And I'm wondering that, I certainly want snow removal, and I certainly appreciate the job that the Department of Transportation has done, but can there be something done to stop the emissions that these trucks are doing? Because I'm told that I shouldn't be running my car more than 3 minutes. I'm told that I shouldn't be using my grill too often or cutting my grass too much because that's bad for the environment. Yet these diesel trucks are sitting there for hours and hours and hours on end, wasting fuel, pumping emissions out into the atmosphere that we regular citizens are told we can't do. So there's some way we can bring these state contractors in. I don't know what ideas you have, but it certainly seems like hypocrisy.
Thank you. I think we will all look into that. It's a really good point. This is the first complaint I've ever had about being too prepared for snow. But I will, there's no, PDOT gets a lot of incoming, and we'll check on this one too, because no one wants to diesel engine burning when it doesn't have to be. So I'll check into it.
Thank you. Hey, sir, just one thing. If you can just make sure to get your input to Delegate Sickles or St. James or anyone say we'll get back to you.
Yep, we are. I'm on the Transportation Subcommittee on Appropriations, so they pick up the phone more quickly now.
You'll see that no funds are appropriated for the fuel until it starts snowing. Okay.
Contracts are awarded in advance and we're paying for those salaries.
Okay. So the woman next to you has her hand up with a question.
Hi, I'm Nancy Almazi. I have a question and a suggestion. I appreciate Delegate Sickles' comment about the need to diversify the economy to Northern Virginia. We do not know how long sequestration is in place, and it's high time that Northern Virginia become less dependent on jobs with the federal government, because like I said, we do not know when sequestration is going to end, if ever. So one suggestion I would have, and I got this from my husband's barber, is the need to make it easier for small businesses to do business in Fairfax County. It took this man 6 months to get a license just to cut hair. This is just a little barber shop off Telegraph Road. It's not a day spa. He doesn't do mani-pedis. He just cuts hair. I don't even think he, you know, and he may do dye jobs. I'm not sure, but nothing. I don't know what goes on in a man's barber shop. But it took him 6 months to get a license. My suggestion is, you want to reduce office building vacancies. You want to bring small businesses to Northern Virginia to offset the effects of sequestration. Lower the licensing and regulatory burdens on these small businesses. So, and then my next question is, we hear all this stuff about we need more money for schools. I would just like to know what the status is on the audit, on the school budget. I understand an auditor has been hired. And I just kind of want to know what the status is, because, you know, it's great that you want to increase funding and so forth, but what are you doing with the money that you already have? Thank you.
So before I pass the microphone off to the school board member, Kaufax, in terms of barber shop, if that's a state license for barber cosmetology, that's our responsibility, so let us know the circumstances, have that person contact us, so we can see if there's something we can learn about it to make it easier for people in the future. We try and keep, our state is a lower regulatory state in general, but we're always looking to hear about stories about particular experiences.
Thank you. Yes, we did hire an auditor this year. This is our first, she's probably been there about 3 months. And the way that will work is the audit committee will set up, we've always had an internal auditor, but this person will now add another additional staff person to our system and will allow us to look at our systems more efficiently and more effectively. We had a state efficiency audit about 1.5 years ago, and that was an audit of our entire system run by a state organization. And what they found is Fairfax County was one of the most effective and efficiently run systems in the state. So that was about 1.5 years ago. I can get you that information if you want to leave your card with me later. The monies for schools are necessary because we've talked about this, because of growth, because of the needs that the children are bringing to our schools, and because we have been cutting significantly. And while Senator Surovell talks about there has been additional state funding, there's kind of an abysmal statistic. We are number 10 in the country as far as wealth in states. We are number 41st in state funding of education. That is something we need to work on. That is something every one of these state electeds is here to work on. I was down there with the board chairman and our legislative representative just last week, and I saw George and his cutout cardboard, and I let him know it's for Scott.
The cardboard George is always there.
It was George squared. It was George squared, so it was definitely fun. I saw Mr. Sickles. I left notes for Senator. But the point is we are down there. We are working with the states. We have been noted as an efficient and effective school by the state auditor. Our budget is audited yearly by the state accreditation systems that public schools are required to use. And also, I think well, I guess that answers your question. I don't know if I have to go further than that, but thank you.
Is it okay to talk about schools now then? My name is Laura Osborne. I'm a Fairfax County homeowner. I'm a proud parent of a Bucknell Elementary student, and I'm a proud teacher at Rose Hill Elementary just up the road.
I'm an early childhood class-based teacher, which is a special education teacher for our youngest and most vulnerable students in the county. My students this year are 2-year-olds who have special needs. We are the first people in the county that take them in and help the parents and them adjust so that they can get a free and appropriate public education. I'm passionate, I love my job, and I'm really good at it. And I have to say, I've been at Rose Hill for 9 years. I love my school. We have some great programs there. We have Spanish immersion. We have great special education programs. We do an amazing school play every year. My problem is that at the salary band I'm at as a mid-career teacher, this is my 11th year teaching, I could make $12,000 a year more if I switched to Arlington, Alexandria, or any of the surrounding counties. And I want to know, without that funding, you're losing great teachers all the time. I want to know what you're doing to keep Fairfax County a district that brings families and businesses in, instead of losing people like me, because I'm starting to think, why stay at Fairfax County when I could be a great, passionate teacher and help my family stay in Fairfax County?
First, I want to thank you for what you do and for what you do for the kids. Unfortunately, we don't pay our teachers well enough in most any circumstance, and I know it's tough. I do want to, before I hand it over to Tammy, just point out that they're doing a lot with what we give them, and what they get is just what little the state gives or what the county gives them through taxes, but I do want her to have a chance to address it, of course.
I hope you know that I have been passionate about this issue. Early childhood, I actually sat, prior to sitting on the school board, I sat for Supervisor Kaufman and Supervisor McKay to be part of the Child Care Advisory Council, and I chaired that committee twice. They deal directly with early childhood education, and since I've been on the board, I've been an advocate for that, because what the work you do brings them prepared to learn when they come to us. We have worked hard to do that, but we do not currently fund enough for early childhood, and I can tell you what's in the budget, and that is both on the school and the county side. And we have, the schools, I can tell you, opened up at least 7 new early childhood learning centers since the board that I've been elected to has been on. This is a new board this year, but that was the previous 4 years. What do we have for mid-year teachers? What we have right now is we have a proposed teacher salary scale investment of $40 million for you.
What do you need?
Well, and I am advocating with my funding partners. We definitely, I will allow Supervisor McKay to speak to this. Right now, as we said, even though there's great hope that all of these gentlemen who are at the state level are advocating strongly for us, as is the governor, but the state money is not coming this year. The proposed 3% will not meet our minimum needs that the county executive just proposed. And the cuts that we will need to make will cut into the proposed money for our mid-year teachers, as well as may have some of those more draconian cuts, which because the low-hanging fruit is gone, for those which the Citizen Budget Advisory Committee put together in the fall. These are cuts that are unacceptable to any of us on the school board. It is not a partisan issue, and we are working very, very hard with our funding authorities to make sure our needs are met.
Thank you for your question and for what you do. As I mentioned, I'm a parent of FCPS students, I'm a product of FCPS, and I'm a child of teachers. So I get what a difficult job you have. Let me just say a few things. First of all, the county executive released a proposed budget on Tuesday. That's his job to do. That budget will go through extensive deliberation over the weeks and months ahead before a final budget is adopted. That budget includes a $54 million increase over last year's budget. So that's not a cut, that's a $54 million increase over last year's budget. That does not meet the request that Dr. Garza has given the Board of Supervisors, and so that's where the conversation of then what has to be cut has to happen if we were to adopt that. A few things that are interesting. One, for many years we've been told that enrollment growth increases in ESOL and special needs are the drivers in the increase in the school budget. And for the first year ever, the schools are projecting an enrollment decrease. They have a decrease in ESOL and a leveling off of special ed students. So the metrics are changing a little bit in terms of what the drivers in the school budget are. And so we do have some questions about how that translates into the school budget. The other piece that everyone needs to be aware of is Dr. Garza's budget included, and rightly so, included none of the cuts that Tammy mentioned. There are no cuts in her budget transfer request of the Board of Supervisors. And lastly, there's zero projected increase in state funding in her budget. So we know there will be an increase in state budget, in state dollars coming for education. We don't know what that is. We know that there's going to be a reduction in enrollment. We know that when we do make our transfer, I can tell you, and you know, I've served on the board for 8 years. I've voted to increase the budget for the schools virtually every year I've been on the board. We've increased school funding by over $200 million in the last 4 years. So there will be an increase from the Board of Supervisors in the school transfer above and beyond what the county executive has recommended. The question is, what is that amount, and then how do the schools deal with it? But I'm going to tell you that I'm going to continue to be extraordinarily passionate about the chart that you have, that all of you have, that shows you where per pupil funding in Fairfax County comes from. There are 3 counties in the entire Commonwealth of Virginia, 3, that put more per pupil money in education than Fairfax County does. One is Arlington, and one of the reasons why Arlington's able to do that, first, their scale is different, so their cost per pupil is different because they don't have the economies of scale of Fairfax, so their cost per pupil is a little bit higher than ours. The other reason is their economy is based on their commercial tax base, not their residential. So when increases in taxes happen on Arlington, they fall largely squarely at the feet of the business community in Arlington and not on the homeowners. Scott mentioned they're increasing they're reducing their tax rate, but their bill is going up because of their assessments. So they're actually generating more money through that. But the 3 counties that pay more per pupil than Fairfax County, Arlington is one. Bath County is one because of their funding formula is skewed by the existence of the Homestead Resort. That's how much one property can skew somebody's LCI. And the other county is Surrey County. And that's because they have a nuclear power plant and some other outliers that skew their LCI. So when you look at local government's investment in education, we invest more per pupil than every county in Virginia except those 3 as a starting point. Next door to us in Prince William County, their cost per pupil is around $10,000. 5 of that comes from the state, and 5 of that comes from Prince William County. So every child that walks in a school in Fairfax County gets twice the amount of local revenue investment in their education than a child who walks through the door of a school in Prince William County. So Prince William has a 50-50 state-local funding split. Fairfax County has about a 75-25. 75% being paid by local government. Where that intersects a problem is the questions about human services and police that came up earlier. One, I have to balance all the pieces of the community together, and that's a very difficult thing to do because undermining public safeties, libraries, parks, human services undermines Fairfax County Public Schools because our families need those to be successful in school as well. So I have to practice a balancing act with that. The other challenge is we are limited in terms of generating revenue in Fairfax County by the state to essentially real estate and personal property taxes. Those 2 things combined make up 80% of our revenue in our budget, 65% on residential tax rates. So I'm left with limited options to be able to raise the revenue by state law. And so we constantly have to look at increasing the tax rate. In order to fund the extra $54 million for the schools and to meet the county's needs on public safety, human services, we're investing a lot of money in a diversion first program to keep our nonviolent offenders out of jail and actually reform them so they can be productive members of society. When you look at all these programs that the county has in place, the county executive's advertised budget is based on a 3-penny tax increase. And that 3-penny tax increase equates to about $325 for the average household. And we know many people don't fall into this average category, but that's $350 for the average household. If we go to the 4-penny, which is what he recommended, of course that incrementally goes up. If we were to fully fund Dr. Garza's budget, the tax increase would be nearly $600 per property owner in the county, which doesn't seem like a lot to a lot of folks, but we have to understand a few things here. One, I do represent a lot of low-income populations. I do represent a lot of senior citizens on fixed incomes whose biggest bill every year is their real estate tax bill. And I don't have a lot of other places to go for that revenue. And so we do not, local governments in Virginia, and this is something a lot of people don't realize because they hear this in Maryland all the time, local governments in Virginia do not tax income. So the statistic that Tammy gave you about being in the top 10 in income, and Virginia being the bottom 10 in education funding, the income the state is getting is from Northern Virginia largely. And we're not getting that share back in education funding because local governments don't tax income. So I get questioned all the time about how can we be this wealthy and have these projected deficits every year. One of the reasons is Fairfax County doesn't tax your income. We only tax your real estate. And so you can't control what happens to your real estate. The market is driving what happens with your real estate. In my opinion, it's a regressive tax in a lot of ways. Lower income people pay a higher percent of their income for real estate taxes than high income people in Fairfax County do. And so this is not just a simple, why can't you just come up with the revenue? There's a lot of challenges built into this. I will tell you this, that when we advertise the tax rate associated with this budget, the county executive's budget's based on a 3-penny increase. He's recommended we advertise 4. I am open to advertising higher than that because I think the board needs to have the flexibility to make the decisions they need to make the budget ends meet. I do not believe we will ever get to the transfer amount that Dr. Garza has requested, but I believe we can get a lot closer than where we are today. But the difficulty is going to be we need to see where the state revenues come in. We need to see where the population projections come in, because I've been told for the longest time those are the biggest drivers in the budget, and there's a lot of other things in the budget that are drivers as well, and we need to understand what those are. But in terms of the line item stuff about teacher pay, in Fairfax County we have done, and I know the schools are doing it now, they don't have the results of it yet, but we do analyses all the time of pay bands to make sure that people in situations like yours, who may be disproportionately treated in the pay band but is not recognized in the pay band, that we make exceptions to that. Our firefighters have been on a scale for many, many years where we have a goal to have them benchmarked with their peers at a certain place because we recognize recruiting, training, and hiring firefighters is very difficult. It's a difficult job class to fill. And so we have a scale, we monitor it, we make sure we're at the midpoint. And I've been saying for years, I think that the schools ought to do the same thing. Figure out where they're losing people, why, and target pay increases on their pay scale to deal with that. And that's why you should be doing a constant analysis of your pay scale and where people are. And I know the schools are doing that now. I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what the results of that are, because we do need to be careful with our resources and make sure that we're putting them in to keeping people at the midpoint of their teaching career. We don't want to lose those folks. Just like when I hire a police officer, right? It takes me 2 years to train, equip, and get a police officer out on the street. So we've been really careful to make sure that the way our pay is ramped up for public safety, we're keeping them at least for that first 15 years, because the last thing I want to do is lose the training money and investment we made in that person to another locality when they're only been out on the street for a year. And so these are the things that the pay bands have to recognize. The resources have to be targeted to dealing specifically with the issues that you have. Once we adopt a budget and we make the transfer to the schools, then they're going to have to go in and make decisions based on what that transfer amount is. We know that as a Board of Supervisors, but we also as a Board of Supervisors can't tell you that we're going to make a transfer to the schools, increase it by another $20 million specifically so that mid-career teachers can be retained. I mean, that's the decision line item that the school board will have to make.
I just want to say one thing quickly about, I mentioned earlier that the governor has a lot of money for new education. in the budget. The way he did it in his budget is not particularly overly helpful to someone with an LCI as high as ours is. But I think tomorrow we're going to have some good news on the House side. I think. Give us your email, and we'll write you an email on how that turns out Monday. And then, if it's as hopeful as I think it is, then I hope that these 3 senators down here can help get it through the Senate. But you could be, but we're gonna increase the increase it a little bit over the governor's budget amount and distribute it differently. That's not the end result. That's what the House is going to do.
Before we get to more questions, I wanted to note we're about 9 minutes past where we were going to end. So I wanted Board Member Kaufax, she shared with me just a little bit, just to tie the knot on the education funding. And then if it's okay, we'll take a few more state legislative questions after that. But we'll be trying to be quick with our answers if you're quick with the questions after that.
Jeff did allude to it, that we are doing a compensation study right now that will look specifically at those bands. But what we do know right now, that in mid-year, a 15-year teacher salary, we're $8,500 below Arlington County right now. We are at the perfect storm where there is nationwide a teacher shortage, and unfortunately, because of where we are in our funding streams to our teachers specifically, we started the school year this year, unprecedented number, 200 vacancies in our schools. That is unheard of in Fairfax County. Because we want to hire the best and the most, but we have had trouble finding teachers in STEM-related fields, in language immersion and special education. And thank you for all that you do. We are working hard to do that. So.
Thanks. Okay, so we have limited time, a lot of hands. How many people have a question about state legislative matters? Okay, you've been waiting a long time. Was that a state legislative question? Oh, I'm sorry. Let's have you first. Okay.
Thank you. I'm Rachel Peters. I'm the Government Relations Committee co-chair for the Fairfax Education Association. This is state-related, I promise. We hear constantly from all sides of the table that there's an income issue. And when are we going to diversify our funding for education? When is it going to happen? When is Northern Virginia's issue with the LCI going to be addressed? If we're providing the income for Richmond, if we have the population, when are we going to get more than 22 cents on our dollar? And how is it going to happen? When are these changes going to come in both? Well, I'll keep out the local funding. Mr. McKay does an excellent job of explaining. When is the state money going to come back up to us?
Thanks. That's a question we get all the time. And the reality is not anytime soon. I know people don't like to hear that, but the reality, not Fantasyland, the reality is that formula has only ever changed pursuant to lawsuits. And I've been saying for 4 years, file a lawsuit, Fairfax County. What is happening is improper, it's illegal. I think it violates the state constitution, it violates federal law. There's poor kids, there's English second language kids, there's all these factors that are not being taken into account, that need to be taken into account in the funding formula, and the only way you will change it is through a lawsuit. And so we need to bring a lawsuit. That's the way it'll change. Politically, just so you understand, we go down there, we heard a presentation Senate Finance Committee 4 months ago. Arlington County pays their teachers $77,000 a year on average. Grayson County, which gets about 70 or 80% of their budget paid by the state, they pay their teachers $35,000 a year. So politically, what you're talking about us doing is going down to Richmond and persuading a bunch of jurisdictions that pay their teachers $35,000, $40,000 a year to give up more money to jurisdictions that pay their teachers $60,000 to $80,000. That political argument doesn't work, okay? And for anybody to say that we can just go down there and wave a magic wand and change the funding formula, it is not politically realistic. And I wish people would quit saying that it is. It isn't. If you don't like it, bring a lawsuit, okay? That's the way it'll change. In the short term, what we can do is Fairfax County can diversify its tax base by enacting a meals tax. The meals tax will cover, listen, don't tax me, don't tax you, tax the guy behind the tree. There are people that come to this county and they spend money in this county and we're not taxing them. And we need to tax them. We have meals taxes in Vienna, Falls Church, we have it in Alexandria, it exists in Arlington, the city of Fairfax, the town of Clifton, the town of Herndon, everywhere but at the 7-Eleven across the street. Or the McDonald's right over there. Okay, it would generate $80 million and plug this entire shortfall that is there right now tomorrow. And it would only cost you about an extra 10 cents on your hamburger, okay? It's not that big of a deal, I don't think, and that's what we need to be talking about in the short term. Long term, it's to bring a lawsuit. That's my point of view about it. I'm not sure everybody here shares my opinion, that's what I think.
Scott is an excellent attorney, and he will represent you on that lawsuit. And the meals tax, just so you know, the meals tax, which is definitely a tool that these other localities have, and Fairfax, because it's a county, doesn't have it as easy as Alexandria City, where they could just adopt the meals tax by the council. What's required to enact the meals tax is the Board of Supervisors has to authorize it and put it on the ballot, but then it has to pass by the voters, who have twice defeated that. So it would start with another process.
I just want to add one thing to it. The other way is through petition, which is unrealistic because there's a certain percentage of registered voters that have to sign a petition to put it on the ballot. But I've consistently said I'm okay with putting it on the ballot. I mean, I asked the voters, but I'm going to be realistic. Scott wants to be realistic. I'm going to be realistic and tell you I don't think it will pass. If it does pass, then it will be authorizing, and the Board of Supervisors will have a decision whether or not to enact it. But I need a whole bunch of things locked down before I would enact a meals tax. And the things I need locked down, as an example, is Scott mentioned $80 million that takes care of our deficit this year in 1 year. Well, that's true this year. But if we think that a new tax in Northern Virginia is going to net $80 to $90 million of new revenue annually indefinitely, we're kidding ourselves. So my concern with it is there's a message in Richmond that's tied to what Scott said about the political reality of the funding formula. And that message in Richmond is simplistically, everyone in Northern Virginia is really rich. And when they need money, they can just reach in their pockets and pay. They don't need our money. My wife is from the Northern Neck. They have preschool down there. Their preschool is paid for by Fairfax County taxpayers, but I can't have preschool in Fairfax County public schools? I don't care if it's political nonsense to say that's not going to change. That's not fair, and I'm going to continue to say that that's not fair. If you think $80 to $90 million of new net revenue from a meals tax is going to solve the school's budget problem indefinitely, and you don't think that over a period of years that $80 to $90 million will erode in other state funding formulas and other things will happen, and over time that'll disappear, and we'll be left with a net new tax in Northern Virginia that doesn't bring in net new money. That's what my concern is with the relationship that we have with Richmond. If we don't send, in part, a message in Richmond has to be that every time Northern Virginia needs money, they can't always just reach into the pocket of people in Northern Virginia. Sometimes we actually should be getting some more of our money back. And so I support a meals tax because it diversifies revenue and brings in money to the county from people who are visiting and people who aren't county residents. But one of the diversification elements is to try to relieve the tax burden on real estate. And we're not going to do both if you're going to have net new revenue. And I think over time what you're going to find is with funding formulas and other things in Richmond, that 80 to 90 million will evaporate over a period of years, and we'll be left with a new tax and not that net new revenue. But the really important point of this is no problem putting it on the ballot, but the way the law is written in Virginia, as Adam said, the voters must approve by referendum before the Board of Supervisors can adopt a meals tax. And that message is clearly not out there in the community, because the community just feels like next Tuesday the board can vote to implement a meals tax. That's not what the law says. I think you have the votes on the Board of Supervisors to implement a meals tax if that were what the law allowed, but that's not what Virginia law allows.
Yes. Thanks, Jeff. You had a question in the back. You've been waiting.
She's got the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry. He's got the mic. You got the mic.
Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So my name's Jill Allen Murray. I know some of you, I live in Rose Hill. My kids go to Rose Hill Elementary. I know you want to keep this to state-focused questions, but I also think you really need to hear from people like me who are really, really frustrated about what is proposed by the cuts that are out there. So I have a lot of respect for the positions that you hold. I'm really excited to hear all of your answers about lots of different things. You guys put yourselves out there to serve, and I appreciate that, and I respect you, and I'm really happy to see that we have such smart people serving us. So thank you. I want you to know that I have 3 kids who are uncomfortably here, kind of stresses me out. I appreciate the people around me being patient. But I think you should see them, and I think you need to know that they're going to be affected by these proposed cuts. And they know it. They know it. Charlie's in kindergarten, Ella's in 2nd grade, Maeve, my 1-year-old who can't stand being here, is hopefully going to be in the immersion program. The 2 of them are in immersion. I feel that as a parent, I have stepped up, I have put my kids in the immersion program, and the county has made a promise to me that they're going to be able to go all through the elementary school and get out of that program what we expect them to get out of it. We know that by the time they get through 6th grade, you can compare them to peers, and they actually can perform better on non-foreign language tests. If you pull them out in 2nd and 3rd grade, you match those kids up, they actually will not perform well. So you are doing my kids a disservice and I know you're...
No, there's a question in there.
No, I think mostly it's a comment, and I want it to town hall, and I want you to hear it.
Okay, we
So yeah, I mean, there are a lot of people here who feel this way, and I think, I just want you to know there's a lot of passion here, and I want you to know that, this is something you gotta pay attention to.
I think we're hearing you and we're listening to your passion from the parents who are here and teachers. Are there any other legislative questions? You've been waiting a long time.
Hi there, can you hear me? Okay. My name is Lisa Saracena, and my husband's in the Army. We're a military family. And right here, okay, I'm sorry. So, my husband's in the military, we live here in Fairfax County, and with all the budget issues that Richmond is having, because of the nature of military families, they move in and out of communities, and there's a high concentration of military families in Northern Virginia that are not paying state income taxes to Virginia because they pay taxes to their home state, whereas my husband does. How does that affect the bottom line? And does the federal government compensate Virginia for, you're kidding.
$600
Well, the
a
school
student.
gets impact aid, don't they?
Yes.
Well, in general, the fact that your husband's paying taxes and thousands like him across the state
Exactly.
to another commonwealth
Right.
does affect Virginia.
Yes.
If they chose to have a Virginia residency and paid Virginia taxes, we'd have a lot more. Delegate Sickles reminded me that we have
I think it's $600 per student, and if we operate the 2 biggest elementary schools. Well, one at Fort Belvoir. Now there's 1,600 students in the one school, and then we're building a copy of it right next door to it now. And those are just for the kids from our military, and Fort Belvoir is a center that helps autistic children. So if you're in the military and you have an autistic child, you apply to come and be stationed at Fort Belvoir, so you'll get these services. Our Fairfax County staffs the school, and they get $600. So it is an issue to talk to your congressman about and your senators to help on that score. It's one of many little things we could do.
So for example, there's thousands of military families in the area, and they're here for a short time, 3 to 4 years, and during that time, there's no federal grant to offset the transportation,
They're building the school. They are building the school there. But as far as the big system, no, I've knocked on doors with people in the military that have 3 kids in Jefferson Science and Technology High School. They're paying no taxes here. It's just where we live. And we want to be a state that welcomes the military. We want veterans to retire here. We want to have active duty military in our state. It sustains our economy. In fact, that's what we're threatened to lose, a lot of that. But we want to be the most welcoming place for our military.
Okay.
Hey, you've been waiting a long time. Let's go to you first. Just shout it out.
Just shut it up. So I just have a couple of comments. One is, what is that big building next to the Blue Line? Why has that been empty for years? It's like 10 stories high at the Van Dorn Metro Station. Yeah. It's been empty for a while. The other comment I have is you're taxing residents to generate revenue for the schools. I'm a single parent of 2 Edison graduates. They're in college. I had to do it on my own. I had to sacrifice a lot. I'm still paying these taxes, they're in college, one out of state. My comment about the schools too, one is, there are several residents where there are several families living in one residence. So what you have done is you have escalated the population in the schools, but you're only taxing one resident. Do you see the gap? Yes, so there's people living on top of each other with children who are inflating our school populations and our tax base. If you continue to raise my property taxes, I'm gonna have to move, I'm gonna have to leave, I can't do it. I was unemployed for a year living here. So those are my comments about that. The other comment I have is I'm still kind of curious, and I know you can't do it here, is where is the money going that is going to the schools? Because I don't see how this funding keeps going up and up and up, but teachers need more pay. Where's the money going? Because I know that we've, created airplanes and sent people to the moon and, created types of medicine with just learning to read the Bible. I don't know where the money.
Well, you can know. If you really want to know, you can know.
I do.
It's, you can read it online on the state
Well, I will then.
appropriations committee. Jeff has a budget committee. I'm sure he'll tell you when the meetings are. They go through line by line through the budget, so
Okay.
you can learn. I want everybody to learn where
Yeah.
the money is. That would be the best thing that could happen today, is learn what's going on with your taxpayer dollars, where it is. And as far as the Victory Center, they awarded the contract for TSA to move in there, and then the other second bidder didn't like it, and so they got it caught up in protest for that. So it was there for a while. We got a lot of empty office space. That's not the only one. It's just you see that one, but it's everywhere. So.
And lastly, you said something about the jobs. That I have a friend who's been looking, she's a special needs teacher for a long time. She has been looking for a job. So there's just, all of this is wonderful and great. There just seems to be a lot of disconnect that I'm hearing, that I'm not
Well,
understanding.
what we're trying to communicate to you all is, and I think the local officials have done it really well.
No, I agree.
Is that they have limited income tax not income tax that they receive, that they have priorities to choose amongst. They give the schools a portion that the schools have had stretched on a lot of it.
Right.
And when you talk about, send a man to the moon and stuff, the schools, they've got to pay the teachers,
Well, I know
build the
that.
buildings, and pay for all the programs. Those costs, their outside costs generally not going down at all.
Are the programs going up? Are they becoming more expensive?
They're stretching, and costs of teachers do go up.
Yes, but how?
Cost of teachers,
No, you have to pay the teachers. I agree with that.
that's the single largest.
Well, while
So that's what it is.
it's the we are compensation run organization because of the teachers and the personnel is our most cost. But even though Supervisor McKay said that there was a blip this year, perhaps it's a blip we don't know, we'll know next year. That doesn't mean that the 28,000 children, that's the size of Alexandria, bigger than the size of Alexandria City Schools, nearly the size of Arlington. They've come to our system since 2008. I'm a parent at Edison, we probably crossed over at the same time. We know that our class sizes are bigger, those were the cuts that we're making, and I'm sorry I didn't bring handouts for everyone. I originally wasn't supposed to be on the panel, but I have there, and you can go online, fcps.edu, you go online, the first thing on there right now, because it is budget season, it talks about where the revenue comes from, where the revenue goes, how much is invested in elementary school versus high school, how much is done for teacher salary. Everything is online, it's very easy accessible. I will stay and answer any one of your questions until the very end, whatever you need. Thank you.
I know we're all enjoying this, but we're a little bit late, and we've got another meeting in an hour in Mount Vernon, but why don't we just take, we can come there and ask more questions, but we'll take just one more. Anna, I think you had your hand up before.
Thank you. Yes, several of you have spoken for local control, such as the ability to tax a little more on hamburgers, etc. Can you talk about your opposition to local controls on such things as allowing communities to choose possibly charter schools or allowing local clerks to decide whether or not to charge them $10 for concealed carry?
Sure, I'd like to address that if I might. First off, on allowing communities to choose charter schools, we don't oppose that. We oppose, if I can speak for others on their votes, on the charter school amendment. We opposed Richmond deciding for the local school board, you must have a charter school, you must take this much of your money from what you got and spend it on this thing that your locality is not accountable for, that you, the local school board, have to do without listening to your community, you just must do it. In terms of the $10 fee on concealed handgun permit application fees, right now, anyone who wants to, is that what it's from, the $10 fee? If anyone wants to get a concealed handgun carry permit in Virginia, at the local clerk, the clerk is required to charge them $10. There was a vote on whether or not the clerk could choose to charge them or choose not. I voted for consistency on that. It didn't seem to me that we're having such tough times with people throwing away money that if you have to pay for a fishing and hunting license, you shouldn't have to also pay for your concealed permit license, permit. So that's kind of where we are. I don't know if there's.
I'm sorry, I know that you're trying to wrap up. My name is Cristina de la Rosa. I'm a parent, taxpayer, homeowner, and I simply want to, before you leave, because I know you're trying to finish up, I want you to relay to Richmond that as a parent of students in this community, we really need to remind you that we're not this rich Fairfax County that you guys have the impression that we are. My kids are affected by that impression, and I am here because a lot of my kids' friends and my kids themselves want to have a good education, and I'm their voice. I'm here.
Thank you. Thank you, and thanks for mentioning it. That's our job, is to educate our colleagues. And I asked Senator Surovell on the floor the other day, when he had a bill dealing with educational resources, I said, do you have any poverty in your district? Because I wanted everyone in the chamber to realize that Scott's district was not all having Manhattans and with great coupon in their Bentleys in large mansions. So thank you for stressing that. So anyway, thank you all for coming. I did want to thank the young musicians who performed before we opened. And also, we all have handouts on your way out on our agendas, and I think they have our email addresses. If you don't get our electronic newsletters, all the state legislators at this table have one, and if you sign up, then we make sure to inform you about meetings like this. So thank you also to our local partners, Supervisor McKay and Board Member Kaufax, for all that you do. We know that you've got a tough job.